Hi, it's Doc and Skip from the Morning Blaze with Doc and Skip.
A little redundant there.
Every weekday morning, we bring you the collision of common sense and comedy.
Okay, now what does that even mean?
It means we discuss current topical stories that matter to people in an entertaining way.
Well, I mean, you and I find them entertaining.
Anyway, follow us on Twitter and tell us what you learned throughout the program with the hashtag #WhatILearnedToday.
That's really just an excuse for us to slack off the last segment, as it's written by you, the listener.
Hear the show on demand anytime at theblaze.com/doc.
That's theblaze.com/Doc and Skip.
Oh, so now you want to be a part of this? Now you.
And now, it's time to Stand for Truth with the host of Stand for Truth Radio, Susan Knowles.
And welcome to the program, everyone. I am your host, Susan Knowles. Please check out my website at susanknowles.com and the articles that I write as a contributor to The Blaze. I have another article up there today on how safe are we after the president's speech last night. Do you feel safe now? Go check it out. I will tell you it's very snarky, so prepare yourself. Don't forget to follow Stand for Truth Radio. It's very important. And there's also a segment I do called Knowles on the News. Just go to Spreaker.com or the Spreaker phone app and type in Stand for Truth Radio and just follow us 24 hours, 7 days a week. And please share the podcast with your friends. Thank you for being with us today. You know, we all have been going through a lot in this country, and today we'll be discussing some of the subjects which fall in line with my guest's book. His book is called Scarlet Letters, The Ever-Increasing Intolerance of the Cult of Liberalism. I love that title. Really pinpoints exactly what's going on. So let me introduce my guest, and we'll jump right into things. Like its namesake, Scarlet Letters addresses the hard truths of life in an increasingly progressive America, where the irrational prejudices of a group can crush the soul of the individual. In both the old and new puritanism, worshipers achieve a sense of moral worth simply by designating themselves among the elect. No good works are required. To validate that uncertain status, they feel compelled to heap upon the sinner, lest they are to be thought guilty of sin, rather than simply cataloging the neo-puritan assaults on
reason and liberty. Scarlet Letters illustrate how the progressive movement
came to mimic a religion in its structure, but not at all in its spirit, while profiling those brave individuals who dared to take a stand against this acquisition. Jack Cashill is an independent writer and producer. Jack has written 10 books in the past 12 years, most recently Scarlet Letters. He also serves as an executive director of Ingram's Magazine. He writes regularly for American Thinker and WorldNet Daily and has a PhD from Purdue University in American Studies. So let's welcome to the show Jack Cashill. How are you, Jack?
Hey, Susan, I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show, and hope things are well and good in sunny California.
So far today. We'll see how the rest of the day goes, but so far. I don't know about you. I was just talking about the the president's speech last night. I'm sure we'll get into it, but I'm hoping you're feeling just as confident as I am today about it all.
Well, the thing is, and this is not only true of you and me, but it's true of every thinking American. No one takes him seriously anymore.
Yeah.
And I was just watching this morning a really incredible interview with this fellow named Michael Weiss, who's an author of a book on ISIS and who writes for the Daily Beast, which is a left-leaning publication. And it was the most excoriating 3-minute presentation. This was on CNN with Wolf Blitzer on Obama's foreign policy that I've ever seen. Blitzer didn't even interrupt him. There's no helping him. And if the left isn't taking him seriously, who is?
Yeah, I know it's watching the left kind of eat their own. It's going down that road now because even they are just done with him and ready for him to step aside. It's amazing to watch. But like I said, we'll get into that further. Now, I did read your book, and I think the topic is very relevant to what's happening today. And before, we dive into everything, can you tell our audience a little bit more about the personal stuff? Where you were born, how you came to believe what you believe,
Sure.
and how you came to write this book?
Well, I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and my father was a cop. And as I was coming of age, the city was crumbling around me, and I could see why. It was obvious. I mean, my neighborhood collapsed fully around me. It went from being a sort of not prosperous, but a contented kind of working class neighborhood to a hellhole within 10 years. And you could see it was the result of the welfare culture which had taken over society. And then as I watched the media, they blamed people like us, the ones who were stuck there, for the problems in the cities, or people like my father was a cop, and my uncle was a cop. I have 4 cousins who are cops. And even though I grew up in what was then a democratic society, where most people voted Democratic, I don't know any people who survived what I survived who today would call themselves a liberal. But that was the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then once you open your eyes, you begin to see the arguments of your allies for what they are. I mean, you begin to pay attention to them rather than just writing them off. So like the pro-gun crowd or the anti-abortion crowd, you begin to understand where they're coming from. And their arguments are extremely persuasive, and you round out your philosophy over time.
Well, now, I understand what you mean by Scarlet Letters, but, just in case somebody has never heard of the book or heard of what Scarlet Letters mean, tell us a little bit about what you mean about of that definition of that is, so we can all be on the same page.
Right. In the 1850 novel, The Scarlet Letter, which many people have read in high school or some point along the way, the protagonist of the novel, Hester Prynne, is accused of committing adultery, and the proof is in her baby. I mean, she did. She doesn't deny that she did. And it's set in like 1650, set back 2 centuries in the 17th century New England. And as a result of being apprehended as an adulteress, both the church and the civil polities punish her, and that punishment is that she has to wear a scarlet A for the rest of her life on her chest, embroidered. Now, at that time, say what you will about the immoderation of our Puritan ancestors, compared to the contemporary neo-Puritans, they were the picture of moderation, and they were also fair. I mean, people weren't rashly accused, occasionally were, but not always. And their law was biblically grounded. It was centuries old, millennia old. Today, and I got my inspiration, Susan, I was watching this documentary on Jim McGreevey, who was former governor of New Jersey, who had to step down after being caught in this gay sex and security scandal. He hired a non-citizen to be New Jersey's Homeland Security Director because he had a crush on him. And he's trying to atone for his sins by becoming an Episcopalian minister. And he's walking into a church, and on the signboard it says, this is literally what it says, and this is where I got the inspiration for the book. It says, Jesus liberates us from our sins of, in this order, homophobia, sexism, racism, and classism. Mm-hmm. And then I realized if there were a bigger signboard, they might have thrown in xenophobia, Islamophobia, climate change denialism. Today, if you disagree with someone on the left, you're not just wrong, you're immoral. And you deserve to be punished. You deserve to be ostracized from polite society. Well, they cluster in their own little perfect cell of selectness, of electness, of goodness. And all they have to do to profess it is to say it. They don't have to do anything. And we saw how lethal this can be in San Bernardino last week.
Right. 2 neighbors
were afraid to, see something, say something, because they were afraid of being slapped with a scarlet eye for Islamophobe. And so they held back, and 14 people are dead now.
Well, and I know exactly how they feel because it's not that easy in California. I've had an experience myself where, and I think I've told this on air before, I saw a gentleman in a neighborhood taking pictures of little girls that were totally unaware that he was in the neighborhood, and there were no adults around, and I was very concerned about that. And I called the police, and I start describing, what's going on, what the car looks like, how old the guy is, and then they asked me, well, what race is he? And when I said, it appears to me that he may be a black man, the conversation totally turned around, and it was on me.
Right.
It's like, ma'am, he has a right to be in the neighborhood. And I'm sitting there going, look, I don't care what race he is. I care about this. Could be a kidnapper, a pedophile. I don't know, And so it was ridiculous. So I'm sure if they had called in there, the police would have said, well, they're not doing anything wrong. Why are you calling us? It's that type of thing. And
no,
it's real.
I understand perfectly. In fact, the average thinking American has probably been accused of one or more of these sins several times in his lifetime. I've been accused of all of them, publicly.
Yeah.
And if you speak out like you do, Susan, or if you're a public commentator, you're constantly being called these things.
Right.
And in some cases, it can kill your career.
Yeah. Absolutely. And people, they're very cautious about speaking up and speaking out. And I think, we're getting to the point where people are saying, enough is enough. We see the writing on the wall. I don't care anymore. I'm going to speak out if it means I lose everything. And that's kind of where people are now with Islam and the whole, ISIS and what's going on. People just know that they're not being protected. You wrote about neo-puritans. Tell us about the definition of a neo-puritan and what they do.
Well, I describe them as progressive neo-puritans, and that's part of the process. What they do is they're scolds, they're moral scolds who get no greater thrill out of life, really, than accusing someone of racism or sexism or homophobia. I mean, like we saw an example this summer, for instance, and I'll just put it in context because the only reason I was watching ESPN that morning is because the British Open was on, and they were broadcasting it. Normally I avoid ESPN because they've become a hotbed of sort of sports liberalism and neo-puritanism. And they were talking about Brett Favre on some talk show. And the night before, Bruce Jenner had been given the Arthur Ashe Courage Award. Right. And the athletes all got their memos from their publicists saying, okay, this is at the ESPYs, the sports award show. When they get the award, clap, be polite, don't say anything, Well, Brett Favre, former Green Bay Packer quarterback, doesn't get the memo. And so Jenner comes down the aisle in like this ball gown or whatever, and Favre gives him like this like what? And the camera captures it. And by the next morning, he is being denounced on ESPN as, and this is the word they use, this is the umbrella word for all the various subsets of sin that you can commit. And you know what the umbrella word is? Hater. He's a hater, right? 2 weeks before, any comedian could have told the Bruce Jenner joke and gotten away with it. By that day, you were a hater if you said Bruce Jenner,
Right.
I mean, that's how progressives progress. That's what you have to know about them. They're never satisfied. An old school liberal might be satisfied with some taking a position, like say for free speech or for innocent until proven guilty. But progressives don't care. They have to keep progressing. They have to keep inventing new sins and new crimes and finding new culprits. And then their great thrill is when they can then light the torch and take it to the stake and set someone ablaze, their career, their reputation, whatever, to destroy that person. It is a totally negative religious phenomenon cloaked as a political movement.
Well, and it's gone to, I mean, not that it wasn't extreme to begin with, but it has gone to the real extremes when we are supposed to believe now that, let's just take your example with Bruce Caitlyn Jenner, that a person who still has the anatomy of a man is now a woman. Rachel Dolezal, who is a white woman, I'm supposed to believe that she's black. Sean King, I'm supposed to believe that he's black even though he's white. I mean, it's kind
Warren,
of...
we're supposed to believe is an Indian.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
And it's absurd. It takes it to a whole new level, but it's brainwashing that they love to do, because if they can convince you to change the way that you think about reality and the way you react to it, then they've got you. They really have people. They really do.
And with their control of the media, academia, even in public schools, they have some extremely viable mechanisms for brainwashing. However, I see some signs of hope, and I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. On June 10th of this year, my book was coming out in August. I wrote an article, about it just to sort of as a public relations kind of strategy. And I began the article with this sentence: Republican nominee for president will be that candidate who best learns there is no future in apologizing. That was on June 10th. On June 16th, Donald Trump declared. I didn't even know he was in the race, really, other than just as a sort of a lark. And he's not necessarily my favorite candidate, but I got to give him credit for changing the whole dynamic of how one responds to these kind of charges. Because on day one of his campaign, they were rolling out the Scarlet X for xenophobe, because he was anti-Mexican, right? And he just told him to go shove it. He told him to go shove it. And it was so refreshing. And Ben Carson picked that up when they charged him with the Scarlet Eye for Islamophobia. He said, no, I'm not going to apologize. So we see more of that.
Well, and it's what Americans used to be like before we were silenced by all of this political correctness. It really was. People, if you told them that in the past, they would look at you like you're crazy, like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to apologize for telling the truth, but somehow that, telling the truth became bad, and lying and accepting the lies became the right thing to do, the progressive right thing to do. And it is amazing. And so we're getting back to common sense more. And people like Donald Trump, it's common sense. That's all it is. Yeah,
you're right. And if nothing else, his campaign represents the resurgence of common sense and the willingness to say it, to tell the emperor he has no clothes on, to tell Bruce Jenner, as Ben Shapiro did on the one show, no, he's a man. He's a man with a psychological problem. If he always wanted the body of a woman, that's fine. I always wanted the body of Bruce Jenner. It's not like he was impoverished physically, Right. I mean, for those who don't know, he was the greatest athlete in the world 30 years ago. Yeah. Male,
absolutely. Right. Very, strong and powerful male. I mean, that's who he was, But thank goodness he changed.
But we saw as we saw in San Bernardino, though, the Scarlet Letter phenomenon, the imposition of letters on people for fear of offending the liberal orthodoxy can be fatal, and that's beginning to sink in, I think.
Well, and not only do we need to accept the Scarlet Letter and the for example, we not only need to accept that Bruce Jenner is Caitlyn Jenner and that he's a woman. We have to then put her on a pedestal, because it's not enough just to accept it now. You must not only accept it, but raise them up and acknowledge and reward whatever behavior the progressive left says that you should do. And people go along with it.
That's exactly right. Because, a generation ago, gays would say, please tolerate us. Right. Now they say, celebrate us or else. Right. Celebrate us or else. There's a fascist urge in this whole phenomenon that it hasn't reached fruition yet. I mean, they really, except in rare instances, have the power to send us to the gulag. But they do have the power to shame us, and they use it relentlessly.
Yeah. Well, and not only, I'll take it even a third step further, not only do you have to do those first two steps, accept it, raise them up, but now you also must put yourself down. So especially if you are white, especially if you are male. I saw a photo that was going around of a male young guy, probably, I don't know, in his early 20s, with a sign basically speaking down about being a man and how he needed feminism because it was the right thing to do. I mean, it's amazing, but you have to totally give up who you are now and just join in, or you are doomed with these people.
Right, and yet their plan of action is essentially doomed because they are trying to convince people to go against their own human natures and to go against the whole DNA of the American experience. So for a white male to subjugate himself to some larger cause, is very difficult. You need a particular class of utterly and thoroughly brainwashed white males. Most white guys, I'm going to tell you this won't come as a shock to you, but most white guys, when they get together, in a group where you trust your people, all the PC stuff goes right out the window.
Exactly.
If you trust your friends, you just say anything. I know. And it's become, you have to be careful, though, because you don't know, someone's going to rat you out, if you tell a racial joke or you say Bruce Jenner, or you so make any kind of comment like that, you're subject to, if there's a person who's infiltrated your group, I mean, it's like a cell, like a plain-spoken, common-sense cell where you can only restrict it to people who you trust,
Well, and it is amazing, but it is getting harder to know who to trust because, again, you could have somebody who you think is in your group and it's okay to be normal and speak about anything that you want, and then somebody turns around and rats you out. And I think that type of aspect of with males especially, I think that will only work or have a chance of working on millennial males because they've been taught from the very beginning that they somehow put women down, there's a war on women, it's their fault, things like that. Most men know that that's just BS, that are older than millennials, but millennials have been brainwashed even more severely than everybody else that's older. There are smart millennials, and hopefully they won't continue to fall for it, but we'll see what's happening. I mean, right now there is a shift that's starting in the United States. You can feel it. How far it'll go, I don't know.
Well, you see, but to your point, Susan, you see, like, I live in the state of Missouri, for instance, and actually my wife's a professor in the University of Missouri system. And, we were watching what's happened in our campus in the last month. Didn't shock anyone because if you follow the universities and you know how the people think, it was almost inevitable. And that in a place run by liberals, and they have created these little monsters, these little self-indulgent, narcissistic, priggish little monsters on campus. And when they rebel, they lose their heads. They're the first ones to go. But what was interesting here in Missouri was that the state's major media, particularly the Kansas City Star and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, tried to sell the campus uprising as a good thing. And they tried very hard. I mean, 2, 3, 4 articles a day for a week. And then they ran the polls. And the state of Missouri, the people in Missouri rejected it by about a 4-1 margin. They thought that the actions were wrong, wanting the professors fired,
I know. So
there is a base of common sense in this country that will not be easy to eradicate. Try as hard as they will.
Well, and I've talked about this before. Parents really need to step up because parents they still have the purse strings for the most part of those quote unquote kids going to colleges. If your kid is going there and spending his or her time out protesting, and you want them to have an education, then you need to just say you either get back into the classroom or I'm pulling the strings, and you're out of there. But I don't know how many parents really want to get involved. I mean, too many parents are willing to just sort of back off and let things happen. Parents need to come back and be parents. Parents have been told you're not supposed to be parents. We don't want you to be parents. The government will do that for you. You just need to sit back and we've got it all. And parents need to say no and take back their power as parents and get involved and stop this stuff because it's absolutely ridiculous.
No, you're absolutely right, and they start that in grade school. They'll send the kid home with some assignment that's horrifying, and what they count on is this: they count on shame, because even if they can't shame you, they could shame your kid, and most parents don't want to see their kids embarrassed. They don't want to see their mother being the one at the school, convocation who stands up and says, Heather should only have one mommy. In my book, then they'll be accused of not being, up to date and avant-garde or whatever, and the kid will be embarrassed and his friends will make fun of him. Even if they don't, the kids will be afraid that will happen. They're so sensitive. I mean, children are, the social pressures, from no matter what environment they're in, but especially an environment like this where the faculty and staff are conspiring against them.
Well, and it's also, they do put the shame on the parents. There's peer pressure on the parents as if they are students. We used to hear about peer pressure just for kids, and that's not true anymore. It's really on parents to conform and do the right thing in their minds, in the progressive's mind, or they're going to be shamed, and no parent wants to be that way. I think in a way it puts parents back to when they were kids and makes them feel like small children, and they have to remember that they're the ones that are paying the salaries. They don't have to feel like that. They shouldn't feel like that. And if something's not working out at the school that they don't like, go and talk to somebody about that. And again, take your kid to another school, because there are great schools. And if the kid's objecting, well, tough. I think it's time we have to get a little bit tougher on issues in this country. We can't keep going the same way.
No, exactly. In fact, in my book, Scarlet Letters, I encourage, that's my theme, stand up. And then I cite the examples of people who have stood up and prevailed. My book came out before the whole Trump phenomenon emerged, but his is a case in point. But, people like Phil Robertson of Duck Dynasty,
Right.
They wanted him, they wanted his family to go on with the show while they suspended their patriarch. And the family said, "Are you out of your minds? That ain't happening." And then you see, it was a classic case study, though, of how this happens. Just to refresh people's memories, Phil Robertson, who's the head of the Duck Dynasty clan, was interviewed by GQ magazine. He didn't even know what GQ stood for. He didn't know they were coming to set him up, and because they wanted to get his opinion on homosexuality, and they figured it would be, kind of biblical. And he was, charitable, but he was saying, this isn't my thing, and he explained why, and then he tried to explain it in physical terms why he didn't really like this sort of thing. And he tried to use the polite words, and the more words he used, the more horrified the left was by what he was saying. So they suspend the show. They suspend him, and they suspend the show. Then this is how bad it gets, though, Susan. Cracker Barrel decides to pull all the Duck Dynasty stuff off their shelves. And then you have to ask yourself, do they have no idea who their audience is, Cracker Barrel, or what they think?
Absolutely.
700,000 emails later, the Duck Dynasty stuff was back on the shelves in 24 hours. And it took A&E Arts and Entertainment 3 days to roll over when they realized that the Duck Dynasty people weren't going to cooperate and their audience was going to go away. And, they, as afraid as they are of the LGBT crowd, the LGBT crowd doesn't have a show with 15 million regular followers. So there is power. I mean, Chick-fil-A showed that with Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day on that subject alone. And there's so many different fronts to fight on: Islamophobia, racism, sexism, homophobia. The trick is this: never apologize. Apologies are never enough, because once you apologize, they want you to grovel, and once you grovel, they want you gone. And so, we've seen that at these universities. I'm gonna give an example, positive example, because I like positive examples. I got my PhD at Purdue, which is in Indiana, by the way, 8-0 record this year in basketball. The president of Purdue is Mitch Daniels, who is former Republican governor of Indiana. He came out right away and said, our university stands, this is the phrase he used, in proud contrast to the University of Missouri and Yale. We believe in free speech here. We will not tolerate the opposite. And I suspect it was the best recruiting tool any university president could have had,
Yeah.
Because parents, you're right, parents want to send their kids to places that teach stuff,
Right. And I think one thing that's kind of sad in a way is that people like Donald Trump and Phil Robertson, the reason they were successful is they have money and they're not beholden to anyone. They don't have to worry about feeding their family because they have a job that they go to, 8 to 5 or something like that. And so other people, like the normal everyday person, feels that they don't have that ability. But I think what the normal everyday person has is they have the ability to stand together with others. And that's where it goes to the purse again. You hurt the purse and people are going to start changing their policy on things. That's what happened with Chick-fil-A. Everybody stood together. Individually they didn't have the power, but together they have the power and they use that power. And I think we're going to have to do more of that. I mean, I think with what's coming up, and I know you heard this the other day with Attorney General Loretta Lynch, who basically violated, if not absolutely violated, she came very close to violating the First Amendment rights of everyone in America when she said, if anything comes close to violence in regards to Muslims, we're going to go out there and prosecute everybody. And I loved it when former Illinois Representative Joe Walsh came out and said, come and get me. This is my First Amendment rights. Oh, it was great. Right. And it was so refreshing. It was just like the Donald Trump thing. But I think more people are going to have to stand up and do that very same thing. And stop being scared. Stop worrying about what's going to happen. Because I'll tell you keep going the way it is, the worst is going to happen. It really will. They will just continue to take your rights away more and more because they know you're not going to do anything about it. You legally, morally stand up.
And your point earlier was well made. I mean, if you work for a corporation today, you're tongue-tied. I mean, they all have to think the same way and feel the same way, even up to the CEO level. They're so afraid. A university president, I mean, Mitch Daniels accepted. These people live in fear every moment. They have to review every thought. They have to edit every thought before it comes out their head, lest someone misinterpret it, Yeah. Science is sacrificed to this. Reason is sacrificed to this. Education is sacrificed to this. And, students are catching on. I mean, right now, the male enrollment in America's universities is down to 40%. I mean, a lot of guys are saying, I don't have to put up with this. What's the point of this? And they go out and find alternative careers, including people like, Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, Rush Limbaugh, et cetera. There's some good examples out there, but you have to rebel. You have to look for that opportunity to stand up and say no. Sometimes you got to be prudent. I mean, if it means your job and you got a bunch of mouths to feed at home, you got to be cautious. But by and large, your courage will be rewarded.
Well, and I think, as Christians, you have to remember, if you are a Christian, you have to remember who you really answer to. You don't answer to the boss. You answer to God, and you will be taken care of. And it's hard. I mean, you don't fight every battle, of course, when you're in a job, but you fight the ones that are, anti-Christian, anti-First Amendment, principles that God gave us. That's what you fight, and that's what people have to stand up for. And it's coming. After last night, and the president said what he said. I mean, it was a joke. It was the same thing over and over. Nothing new about how he was going to help anyone, and everybody was supposed to walk away from that feeling great, like, man, I feel safe now, And more is coming in that regard, and people have to start standing up and saying, government, you need to, and I don't look at it as the government, they need to protect me and they're my keeper, but the government needs to at least do the minimum, and that is their job. Their job is to protect the citizens of the United States. So do the minimum, close the borders, stop bringing Syrian refugees here until you've fixed your vetting process, because obviously it's not working. And they're not doing that. They're continuing right on, to bring in immigrants from Syria because they don't care.
No, but not only do they not care, but it gives them an opportunity, and they look for these opportunities to sort of, pat themselves on the head for being morally superior to the rest of their fellow citizens. To puff up their chest and to say, all of them all at once were saying, if you're not in favor of the Syrian incursion, which most thinking people are not, they start citing Bible verses to shame you. Right.
Exactly.
And then the next week, all of a sudden they find the Christianity is a useful tool. The next week, bizarrely, almost all, you see these themes that they emerge like all across the country simultaneously. For instance, the whole prayer shaming thing that came up over the weekend, about San Bernardino. Where did that come from?
Oh my gosh.
It's partly because there are, they send this stuff out and they have people who follow unthinkingly, and they go to it. And I would say, too, and to your point earlier about, finding little hills, you have, especially with the holidays coming up, and from a Christian perspective, too, you're not out to make enemies. You're not out to scold and hector. You're out to make converts.
Right.
And the way you do that is through information. and through being charitable, I mean, sometimes you got to slap people down a little bit, but, but by and large. And I see this happening on Facebook all the time. I could give a class on how to disarm your friends who are like maybe, your relatives or your Facebook friends who are liberal.
Right.
And you do it with information. You do it gently. You do it with information. So if they say something utterly stupid, what I do is I'll find an article from their side that refutes what they say, So if they say, like, they're fretting about climate change, I'll find an article from the New York Times that says, no warming for 17 years. I'll just leave it at that, You just plant little seeds. You're not going to out-argue them because they're filled with prejudices and they're irrational, and they've been sheltered from real information for so long. They have a hard time recognizing it when they see it. But you hit them with facts that are irrefutable, and they're coming from a neutral source or a source that's friendly to them, and it helps. So information is power, and
a lot more sources on the left are coming out and speaking out now for the first time and starting to say, oh, well, I guess it's time to really start putting the truth out there. And so now people on the left are going, oh, wait a minute, you mean Mother Jones feels this way? And I can accept it. So you're right. You're absolutely right. They have to sometimes get it from their own sources before they're going to believe the truth. And their own sources have hidden the truth from them for far too long, and they don't even realize that.
No, and you're right. And there are certain, leftist outlets that will occasionally tell the truth, And even if it's sometimes they'll have like let's say you're the New Yorker or the New York Times, you may have a columnist who's kind of straight down the middle or tries to be, and every now and then they'll accidentally say something useful. Well, you got to get that out there.
Well, and it's like the climate change. Let's talk about climate change. Oh my gosh. It's we all know, it's such a farce. And I say we, I mean those on the right. It's such a farce. It is done for absolute control, and it's put on by elitists who sit around in Paris with the other UN people and talk about how, we must do this and we must do that. And once again, as you talk about in your book, if you don't accept that, you're shamed into being a denier, right? Is that what you talk about in your book?
Exactly.
Tell us a little
denier
bit.
Is the word. Yeah, the denier is like to understand the origin of the word denier is to understand how the neo-puritans roll. They could have called us skeptics or critics. That's fine, right? Mm-hmm. But denier, which has become the term of art for people who are skeptical of their agenda, or even skeptical of their alarmist agenda, not just of whether there's warming or not, is a phrase taken from people who deny the Holocaust. So they're equating people who deny a historical reality with people who are skeptical about a bogus science, and they they equate the two. So you are equally evil in that one is, you deny the murder of 6 million people. The climate change denier, if you read their deep literature, will say he's willing to deny the potential murder of 6 million or hundreds of millions of people because of their failure to act on climate change. It's utterly, totally perverse. It's Michael Crichton, for instance, one of the heroes in my book, broke out in a speech in San Francisco. He was a brave guy. Well, he's like 6'9". He doesn't care, I guess. And there's been few American media people more successful than Michael Crichton. He died about 7 years ago. But he produced ER, he did Jurassic Park, all these, Lost World, The Drama Train. He's made hundreds of millions of dollars in his lifetime. He's a Harvard MD, right?
Right.
And he was a very prominent skeptic. And this is how the D works. When he dies in 2008, in fact, he died, it may have been shock on the day Obama was elected. The Think Progress, it's a typical progressive, publication, headlined the story, Michael Crichton, world's most famous climate denier, dies, right?
Right.
So in other words, his whole life's work, which was extraordinary, is reduced to the Scarlet D, which follows him to the grave. Just like as in the original Scarlet Letter, Hester's Scarlet A follows her to the grave. It's on her grave. So you cannot die.
Wow.
If you get marked with a Scarlet Letter, you take it to the grave with you,
Well, and it shows that's the only thing to them that ever mattered, is that you didn't give in, that you didn't do what they wanted you to do, that you didn't become a believer and raise people up and
right.
and then become one yourself, And it's pretty pathetic that happens with people, and it happens all the time. Look at what they did. You mentioned that in your book about Ted Cruz and climate change.
Yes, right. Yeah, right. They'll hang that label on you, and then that will become their definition of you.
Yeah.
Their idea of you will be reduced to one thought. So it's a strange world and it's a tough world, but you gotta, if you're a battler, in a sense, it makes it even more fun.
Well, and it's like you said, that's when you stick to your guns, you don't apologize, you don't back down, you don't let them have their way. But they all have the same playbook. They really do. People don't understand. This is more important than their jobs. This is more important. This is their religion, to them. This is the most important thing, and they justify doing this to people because it fits their cause, and their cause is more important than anything because they believe they're right. They believe their cause is right, and they believe that they're the elites. They're the ones that are smart. They're the ones that know what they're doing. You are stupid. You don't know, so we're going to take care of you. We're going to make this all go the way we want. You don't have the ability. And it just goes on and on and on, and it's always justified, but don't turn that on them, right, Jack?
Right. It's a negative faith, exactly. It's not like they practice virtues, real virtues. They practice negative virtues, and that is that they live to scold. So, for instance, I was following Twitter last Wednesday when the San Bernardino news was coming in, and I just following it just because often they have the most up-to-date news, so you can pick up on it. But at the same time, you have to wade through all the snark of these people posting, and it's hard to describe in a sentence or two just how hateful the early tweets were about white males, about NRA, about wishing death on Wayne LaPierre. I mean, one thing after another. This is before they even know what the facts are. I grew up playing poker, so if I don't know what the other guy's got in the hole and I think he's got a better hand than I am, I'm not betting into it. They don't know. They don't care. So for like an hour or so, they're just weighing in as though there was nothing. They were gleeful. They loved this. They got joy out of this killing. If it had proved to be some sort of, and then they're tweeting things like, it's only a couple blocks from the abortion clinic, whatever. Right. It's a mile away, It's like the joy, and unfortunately for them, the joy came to an end a few hours later as it began to soak in the reality. But in Colorado Springs, that was a total high,
Yeah.
Total high.
Well, and again, they start early. They bring out a false narrative right away. They don't really care about the facts, which we know. They start trying to convince people that it's this way. So if you talk about that for an hour and you keep talking about it, people who don't go necessarily and check out the news, or even checking out the news sometimes doesn't help, but they will start believing, oh, wow, I guess that is all about abortion. Oh, my gosh, I guess they were going to the abortion clinic to kill people. Oh, it must be Christians. I mean, they believe it because they've been brainwashed to believe that people are going to tell you the truth, that they're not going to lie to you. Who would do such a thing? Even though they do it all the time on the progressive left. That's what they do. It's called propaganda. But it starts to convince people.
Yeah, and since they're shielded so often in their own media from the truth, now in this case of San Bernardino, the news was too big for the mainstream media to suppress, but it wasn't too big for them to suppress the abortion videos that came out over the summer. And by the way, hats off to that guy. He was my MVP for the year 2015, 26-year-old guy whose name I keep forgetting, David something. But I saw them all. If you watch them, you know what they're doing. And this was critical. that was a huge moment. For instance, I just saw someone post something on Facebook today. And it was like one of those like Facebook memes, a little picture of someone, and the caption said, "I'm tired of being told," and it really summed it up neatly. I've talked about this in my presentations. I'm tired of being told that it's not okay to use guns by people who think it's okay to kill babies. You know?
Yeah.
That was very powerful, and it soaked into the mainstream. Now they denied it; they said it was edited, and they'll say one thing or another, but they knew they were had. Planned Parenthood was suffered a huge defeat this summer, and so much so that you cannot run successfully in 2016 as a champion of Planned Parenthood. You could in 2012. You cannot in 2016. You may do it in the primaries, but not in the general election.
I was going to say Hillary might try that because she still, she got the, Sanger Award, and she still hasn't figured out that Margaret Sanger wasn't a good person. So she, to Hillary, Margaret Sanger was just wonderful. So she might try that, but
here's where the battle's being fought, Susan. It'll be fought in the trenches. So let's say we're at Christmas and someone says, "Oh, Hillary should get Planned Parenthood," but there's other people will say, "Have you seen the videos?" And then the defender will say, "Well, those are edited." No. I'm just saying I'm one of these people. No, I said, I'll see the video. Here's what I want you to do, is I want you to watch video 5 in that series. I want you to watch them picking up parts of babies and telling how much each of them is worth, and tell me that you can come back and you can morally sanction that. And as I said to him, I said, if it's okay to do that, if it's okay to kill perfectly healthy babies, traffic in their body parts, and dismember them, what's not okay? What's bad? If that's good, what's bad? And there's no argument for that.
Well, you keep trying to, at least I do. I keep trying to figure out what the difference is between Gosnell, what he did, and what's on those Planned Parenthood videos. I don't see the difference. One was supposedly illegal.
He was unhygienic. He was not hygienic. That's the difference.
That's it. That's about it. Yeah.
Because
he had a little bit
busted on a hygiene rap. Yeah, they didn't go in there to bust him on the fact that he was, dismembering babies and selling body parts. They went in there because he was not meeting the local health standards,
And it's just so amazing.
Right.
That's how far gone we are.
People right. Fortunately, we can talk to each other, Susan, so we can reassure ourselves that there is some hope in the world, that everyone's not mad, but there's a lot of crazy people out there.
But, getting back to what we were saying, too, about the news reports coming out when something happens, it takes so much effort to try to then undo the damage that has been done. So immediately it puts those conservatives on the defense, because you have to then go and unravel and go and make an argument on every single thing and why it's not the truth. We spend so much time doing that. It's not that somehow we need to counterbalance that and get the news out first and say what the truth is, and keep repeating that, so that we're not always on the other side having to undo the damage, because that's where we find ourselves all the time in this instance.
Well, and on the positive side, we have in the United States, we have a better alternative media than any other country in the world does. So our people are on average much better informed than theirs are. And that's validated with every political knowledge test I've ever seen. The conservatives always score higher, no matter who's making up the test.
Exactly. It's so hard, though, to watch CNN.
Yeah, right. At the same time, you've got a lot of making up to do, because the greatest form of media bias isn't that they lie, it's they ignore. They'll bury a story that doesn't interest them. Whose agenda, whose narrative is contrary to their own, they'll bury it. And,
or they just,
so then
or
you
they
have to
skew
tell
it.
people. Right. I remember once, my wife's a university professor, so we have a lot of liberal friends. I should say we used to have more, but they've gotten more and more bitter over the years, and it's hard to reconcile them. But and this was in the late 90s, while Clinton was president, I raised an issue. I said, just to this point, I said, there's a lot of things you simply don't know about. And there's like about 8 people at the table. And I said, like what? I said, who can tell me who Juanita Broderick is? And they were just total blank stares. They never heard of her. They literally never heard of her. I said, she was just on NBC with Lisa Myers. You know, it was big news to people who were paying attention. What did she do? I said she was raped by Bill Clinton. Oh, get out of here, you know.
Her and about 20 other people, or supposedly.
Yeah, right. I see he's obviously a sexual predator. Why is that hard to believe? Oh, no, you're just making that stuff up. That's that right wing. That's Fox News. That's Rush Limbaugh. You know, that's Edward Son. You know that. But they don't want to know. I mean, this is just a fact. You know that she, you know, and as Hilda said, every rape victim should be believed. You know, except the ones who accuse her husband.
Oh, yeah. That's just a topic for her for another day. You know, we'll let Bill take care of that one. But you know, it dawned on me too when you're talking about this that, you know, when you go after somebody for the Scarlet Letter, whichever one it was, and let's say you're calling them a racist, that, I mean, it really does totally shut down all conversation to get to the agenda that's being hidden. You don't even get far with people because they're so, they don't go there in their minds. They're so trained to start calling you a racist and stay on that they cannot focus on anything else that might be deceiving them, anything else that they might want to look at to learn the truth. None of that. They can't go there. All they want to do is respond and call you the negative.
Right. It's psychologically, it's very helpful. Let's say, for instance, if you're black, and you know, let's say I'm driving down the street, I'm not black, and some guy throws me the finger, you know, which happens about once a month. You know, I don't know. If you're driving in traffic a lot. And oftentimes they're wrong, you know, but even if they're right, they throw you the finger. Well, when I'm interpreting that finger, I'm interpreting, I have to say, was I wrong? Was I right? Well, what's up with this guy? What's going on? But if a person who's black is driving the street and a white guy throws him a finger, racist, you know? He has an instant explanation for everything bad that happens to them. He doesn't get a job, racism. He doesn't get into school, racism, you know? A guy doesn't let him turn left on a turn left lane, racism, you know? Whereas if you're white, if you don't have that, I should say not if you're white, if you're conservative and you're white, you're not a liberal. Liberals have a lot of these built-in mechanisms also. You've got to get to the truth of what this interaction was about and why it happened, you know?
Well, all that's going on with liberalism, they give you an excuse. You don't have to look at yourself anymore. It's always somebody else's fault. It's never your fault. So you're just always going to be looking for the reason that you did that to me. You know, what is it about you that made you be a racist against me, you know, xenophobe, whatever the case may be. It's never what I did. It's what you did, always.
Peterson, who's a black conservative, he has a new book out called The Antidote, and he makes a very interesting argument, excellent book, by the way. And he says this, because he grew up this way. You know, he was deprived of both parents, both took off when he was a baby, and he grew up angry. And once he moved to Los Angeles as an 18-year-old, he found that he found people who were willing to direct that anger towards white people.
Right.
And then he came to this, you know, he had an epiphany some years later, and he forgave his parents, and his whole mind cleared up. But then it dawned on him that people who grow up deprived of their fathers, especially, or their mothers, grow up angry and resentful. Now, if you're white and you grow up angry, you may direct that anger in 1,000 different directions. Towards your parents, your grandparents, you know, your society, your school, your friends, whatever. But if you're black, you have someone out there, you have these cheerleaders out there like Farrakhan and Jesse Jackson and whatnot, focusing your internal anger, which is based more on your own family circumstances, towards a larger other, and that is white America. And it's psycomedically very useful because you're never at fault anymore. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And now we do that, not just with, I mean, the phenomenon started in America with, you know, white on black stuff, but now it's been, you know, diffused. Now if you're gay, now if you're trans, now if you're female, now if you're Muslim, you know, now if you're Hispanic. Hispanics, when I was growing up, were just another ethnic group. You know, now they're another race. How did that happen? You know, but there's someone there to direct your hatred. And no group of people in America has had worse directors of hatred than black America, worse leaders, you know, worse people more hostile to their best interest than black Americans have, and they paid the price for it.
I had Jesse on my show a couple of weeks ago. Love him, loved his book. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I told him it was one of those books that I wanted to read, but I hated to read because I didn't want it to end. So it was one of those things that you're like, I hate this, but I'd go back to it because I couldn't stay away from it. But it was the conversation that we had on this show was so refreshing because neither one of us worried about political correctness. We could just have a conversation, and it was great. It was a very freeing thing to just be, real.
As I've said to Jesse, and it's I could say it to him. It's he's a rare black guy. I have black friends of varying degrees of closeness, but of all, even including them, Jesse is the only black guy I know around whom there is not a single eggshell.
Yeah, I know.
You don't have to walk on eggshells when you're talking to Jesse.
Just be yourself, and that's what.
Yeah. Right. Even if you have good black friends, I still find myself editing my comments. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to seem like I'm being too patronizing or too obliging or whatever. But with Jesse, you can wipe all that stuff away and just wade right in there.
I know, and again, I appreciate somebody like that because that's the way it should be. And you know what? If you make a mistake, if you feel like you're too patronizing, you ought to be able to have that friend, whoever it is, go, I think you're a little patronizing, maybe, whatever. And you go, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. And then you move on. But not
right.
Make a federal.
In his case, he would laugh at it, not like
I know he would.
He'd be like funny. Yeah, right.
I know.
Because he was telling me. I think he may even talk about this in a book. He says, I said, the question is, most black people, by the way, today go through their lives without ever being called the N-word by white people.
Exactly.
In Jesse's case, he's been around for quite a while. He said, it was the first time he remembers is walking down the street in Chicago and someone yelled it at him, he and his buddy, and they started laughing. They thought it was funny. What's that about?
Well, it's like I told him I grew up in the South. If I had said that, my mother and my father would have just slapped us. I mean, during the time when they did stuff like that, but there wasn't even tolerated in our family.
No, I grew up in Newark, and I'm not going to tell you we never told racial jokes or had a lot of racial friction, but you never called. You would never think to call a person that.
Absolutely not.
In my house, you would not use the word around in the house. It's not polite. I've been in houses, by the way, where it was used a lot. In fact, I've been in the houses most recently are Hispanic houses where they use the word, but
and that's unfortunate.
But the notion, even in a very hostile racial environment I grew up in, you would not call anyone the N-word. That simply didn't happen.
Just wouldn't happen. Well, Jack, we are running out of time. I can't believe this has been another fast hour that we've gone through. It's been great talking to you. I do love your book. I hope people will go out and buy it. It's Scarlet Letters, the Ever-Increasing Intolerance of the Cult of Liberalism. And I really do like the fact that you called it what it is, which is a cult of liberalism. So, Jack Cashill, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, I appreciate it, Susan. You do a great job, and you keep up the good work, okay?
Thank you so much. And you keep up your good work that you're doing, too, and get the word out there. We need more people like you standing up, writing about it, coming on shows and talking about it so that the rest of us can be empowered by what you're doing as well.
Well, thank you, ma'am. And let's keep in touch.
Well, and please do feel free to come back on, and we'll have you on again. So there you have it, another great show, another great guest. His book really is good. It's just plain language. And you know what? Today we need that type of plain language. I don't know about you. I'm tired of fake. I'm tired of phony. I'm tired of whatever word that you want to use to describe it. I am tired. I have time for people to be real with me, and I don't have time for anything else, And I think probably all of us are coming to that point. Again, I hope you go to my article on The Blaze. It's called Do You Feel Safer After President Obama's Speech About the Islamic State? Again, prepare yourself because I don't hold back. It is very snarky because how do you address something that ridiculous as that speech last night, which gave us nothing new? How do you do it any other way? I hope you come back and join us again next week. And I do really appreciate your being here this week. We are going to have another great guest. Please be careful. Take care of yourself. Be vigilant out there. Take care of your neighbors. Have a blessed week. God bless you, and I'll see you back again next week. Take care.
Hi, I'm Susan Knowles. Do you often feel that our world is upside down, where fiction has become fact and America seems to be unrecognizable? then you'll want to read my fiction, Freedom's Fight, A Call to Remember. Go on a journey with Bethany, who longs for the country she once knew, before the regime took over and changed it beyond recognition. Go with her on her quest to return America to its rightful place. Order Freedom's Fight, A Call to Remember at Amazon.com today.